Hi everyone, and welcome back to the series where I crochet a square from the Granny Square Stitches card deck every week. So this week we have this card. This is the double crochet. So we have already been introduced to the single crochet and the half double crochet. This week we're going to be doing the double crochet. And I wanted to point out something about these cards so that if you want to make your squares as uniform size as possible, then just this is something to note. So what I mean by uniform size is this was the first square that we did. And you know what, I'm just going to pull the square out of the card deck so that I can show you the chart. So that's the half double. They each appear to be starting with a chain of 16. And this one says 15. But the double crochet says 16. When you start with a chain and then you're working back into it, you always have fewer stitches than you did chains to start with. With a stitch, a small stitch like the single crochet, you're only skipping one chain. Let me just zoom in here so you can see the chart a little better. See how there's just one chain up the side here? That's the one we skipped. So we ended up with 15 double crochets, or single crochets, sorry, and that gives us a nice size. With the half double crochet, we started with 15 chains and then we actually ended up skipping 2. So even though those 2 chains acted like a stitch, we still only had like 14 stitches. So this square turned out smaller than my single crochet square, which I'm not super happy about. I'd like to be able to sew all these together into a blanket, you know, have a big sampler blanket to show everybody would be really cool. So moving forward, I want to make sure that my squares are probably about the same size as my single crochet. So I took a look at the instructions for the double crochet, and again, it's starting with a chain of 16, but we are skipping 3 chains. We're going to go into the 4th chain from the hook. So I went ahead and made that just so you could see it. We'll go through it in a little bit. I just wanted to show this to everybody. So this is going to, you're going to stack double crochets on top of this turning chain. So it's pretending to be a stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You've got 14 double crochets. So it's roughly going to be the same size as my half double crochet square, but I'd really like it to be the same size as my single crochet square. So on each card, there is this section right here to work the stitch pattern any size, and it gives you the stitch multiple. Now the stitch multiple here is just 1 because the stitch pattern is it's a single stitch. However, it also it takes into account the turning chains. So this one, your starting chain is the number of stitches required plus 2. So that takes into account all this turning chain business. So I am actually going to be starting with a chain of 18, not the 16 that's written on the card, just so I can make my square a little bit bigger. And I'll probably go back and remake my half double crochet square down the road when I'm putting everything together. But that is down the road. Okay. Let's talk yarn. I'm going to be using the Anthem from Cascade Yarn. So this is our 4-weight, 100% acrylic. In my classes, this is our workhorse yarn. We make a lot of blankets and things out of this. It's cost effective, but it's so lovely, soft and squishy. So I'm going to be using the poppy red and agate green. If you look at the pattern that they've made, and the stitch chart shows it as well, the poppy red only shows up in these single crochet rows. So I'm going to try something because I don't really feel like weaving in a ton of ends. And the way this pattern is you're going to chain, and then you're going to crochet back, and then you have to attach your single your new color and single crochet across, and then you got to reattach your blue and double crochet back, reattach your red. That's just a whole lot of ends to weave in. So I'm going to try carrying my yarn. Now, this may seem an extra complicated step, but if you want to take your crochet up a level, if you want to do any sort of color work, it is a technique that you will have to learn eventually, and might as well start at the beginning. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I need to frog this. If you've never heard the term frogging, frogging is just pulling things apart. And we're starting with a chain. So chains start with a slip knot. I've got my tail in my palm of my hand. I'm just going to hold on to it with my thumb. I'm wrapping the yarn around my 2 fingers. I keep going, and then I take that working yarn and tuck it underneath. Oh, totally off camera. Let's try that again. I wrap it around my fingers. I take my working yarn and I tuck it underneath that yarn on top of my fingers, and I pull out a loop, and then I take my fingers out and I just pull on the loop until it tightens, and that is my slip knot. I can pull on my working yarn to shrink that loop down and get my crochet hook into it. And now the instructions say 16, but I'm going to add a stitch, so I'm going to make it 18. So I need 18 chains. So I'm going to yarn over, pull that through the loop that's on my hook. That's 1 chain. So 17 more of those. Okay, that's 18. And just like the other 2 squares, I am going to be working into my back bumps because that's what I like to do. I like the finished edge it gives along the bottom of my work, and we're going to be adding a border, so having those more defined stitches is something that I prefer. It is not mandatory. But we are going to find, we're looking at this, so we're skipping 3, we need the 4th chain. So I count my bumps, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put my first double crochet in that bump. To make a double crochet, we're going to yarn over, hold on to that yarn over with my forefinger. I'm going to go into that bump, catch my yarn and pull it back through the bump. I've got 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over again and pull through the next 2 loops. So that's my first double crochet. Before we go any further, we need to work a single crochet into the top of those 3 chains that we missed. So I'm just going to pull my hook out so you guys can see this. So stitch anatomy time. This V here belongs to the double crochet that I just made. So I need to put my stitch marker into this V, which is the 3rd chain that I skipped, which is going to become a stitch. So I'm going to mark that chain, and when I come back down the row with my single crochets, that is where my last single crochet will go. Okay, so now we're going to put a double crochet in each chain all the way down to the very end. So for me that's bumps, but you might be working into a single strand of your chain. I'm just going to move that out of the way and hopefully you guys can see better. So I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to insert my hook into the next bump, I'm going to yarn over, pull through that loop. I've got 3 loops on my hook. I just take a moment to sort of straighten them all out. Yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over again, pull through the next 2. And then we're just going to repeat that in the next bump and every bump down the chain. This is my second to last chain, and I just wanted to pause here because we need to change color at the end of this row. So color changes happen in the stitch before you need the color. So that's going to happen in the very last stitch that we make. So I'm going to start the last stitch. I'm going to yarn over and insert into the last chain. Draw up a loop. I'm going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. And then I'm going to pause and I'm going to grab my second color, lay it over my hook, and pull through those last 2 loops. I'm going to give my blue a tug, just kind of tighten everything up a little bit. Now, I want to carry my blue. So first of all, I'm going to lay it over top of my hook, and then I'm going to chain 1 with the new color. And I've just kind of trapped the blue there. I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to lay that blue tail along the back of my work. So it's just going to hang out there. It's not going to interfere with any of the stitches, but I am going to catch it every time I make a stitch. So we're going to be making single crochets, and we need to make them through each, like underneath both legs of the V. So when I make it, I'm going to insert into the stitch. So I'm catching both V's, but I'm also catching the extra blue strand at the back. And then I'm going to pull my yarn back through. I've got 2 loops on my hook. I can yarn over and pull through. So that's my first single crochet. I'm just going to mark that. If you can get in the habit of marking your first and last stitches of rows, then it will really help you with your stitch count. And before we go any further, let's count our double crochet stitches. So they're pretty easy to see because they're nice and tall. Like, you can move your work. Let's just turn it upside down. You can pull your work apart and you can see how tall these stitches are. So they're really easy to count. So you can either count your V's. So we've got 1 single crochet up there already. And then we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then remember, we put a stitch marker in that turning chain because that's going to be a stitch. So that's 16. Or you can count how tall these are. You can pull them aside and count the posts, is what they call them. So we're going to count this turning chain. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So I've added a stitch, as we talked about at the beginning. So I need to make sure that every row I make from now on has 16 stitches in it, whether they're single crochets or double crochets. I have to have 16 stitches. Okay, so I've got 1. I'm holding that blue back there. 2 single crochets. And if you need a refresher on the single crochet, go back and watch week number 1. So I'm just going to single crochet in each stitch, just making sure I'm also crocheting over that blue tail. And don't worry if it pops out at the back. As long as you don't put your hook through the yarn, it's always on the top of your hook. You can fix any little bulges once you get to the end of your row. Okay, I'm at the last stitch of my row where my stitch marker is. So this was the beginning turning chain. So I can take my stitch marker out, and then I'm going to get my hook underneath 2 strands of that chain. So I'm grabbing a V just like it was a regular stitch. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull it through. And then I'm going to pause because we need to change color again. And if we bring the chart back in, we can see that we need to have 3 chains. And these 3 chains are sitting right on top of our single crochet, which means they're pretending to be a double crochet. So our next double crochet goes into the next stitch. Before we do that though, I'm just going to lay this down, and we're going to take a second to gently pull on our blue. And this is where, if there's any instances along here where the blue is like popping out, that gentle pulling will tighten everything up so that you can't see that there is an extra strand of blue. So now that I've done that, I can drop my red, pick up my blue, and then I can pull through with my blue. And now I need to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and we're going to put a stitch marker in the top of that chain 3 so that I can find it when I'm coming back. And then I'm going to turn my work. Now right now my red is kind of on the wrong side, so I'm just going to move it back there. And when I make my double crochets, I'm going to catch it at the back. So now I'm going to yarn over. This stitch is my first stitch, but it has been taken, it's been accounted for by my chain 3. So I'm going to go into my next stitch, so insert into the stitch. I'm going to make sure that that red is laying on top. I'm going to pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is my first double crochet of the row. Yarn over, insert into the next stitch, making sure to catch my red yarn on top, and do a double crochet. And I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to put a double crochet into every stitch, catching that red behind me as I go each time. So I'm going to continue on. I'll meet you at the end. I'll do one more color change with you, and then I will leave you to work out the rest of the pattern on your own. Okay, I'm at the last stitch, and just like when we did our first single crochet, I'm going to start this last stitch. I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to be changing color, and then I'm just going to lay it down and give my red a bit of a gentle tug. So you don't want to tug so hard that you, let's see if I can do it, sort of pull those stitches. You see how this curled up? You don't want to do that. You just want to pull it so that any bits of the red that are showing through on the back side flatten out and tighten up. Okay, so I'm going to drop my green, grab my red, and pull through. Whoops, split my yarn there. That's not good. Let's try that again. Pull through with my red. And now that is the pattern, you guys. So you're going to change color every row, and because I don't feel like weaving in a ton of ends, and I don't think you do either, we're going to carry our yarn back and forth. It does mean you're going to use a little bit more yarn, not like a ton, just, you know, a few inches more. But it will make it less headachy at the end. So let's start one more row together, and then I'm going to let you go, and you just need to repeat this. You want to have 4 rows of red. After this last row, after you've finished your last row of red, you can cut off that yarn. You don't need to carry it through anymore. And then I will meet you up when we're ready to put the border on. But before we do that, let's start this next row together. So I've switched to red. I'm just going to lay my blue on top so that I can trap it. I think I need to go the other way. There we go. Chain 1, turn my work, hold my blue behind me. Now, you see here how my blue is on top of my red yarn. I don't want that. I want it underneath. So I'm just going to move it. And then I can make my first single crochet in that first stitch. Put my stitch marker in there. And keep going. I'm going to go through my stitches, but I'm also going to make sure that I'm grabbing that blue, or that I'm trapping that blue, I guess I should say. Okay, I'm going to keep going, changing color until I have finished this pattern, and then I will meet you up and we'll do the border together. Okay, I've almost finished. I've just got one stitch left, and I thought we could do that together and then start the border. The border instructions are on pages 22 and 23 in your booklet, and it's just basically 2 rounds of single crochet. In the corners, we're going to be doing a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, but we'll cover that. Okay, so I've got 1 stitch left. I can take out this stitch marker. I don't need it really anymore. I have 1 more double crochet to put in there. I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work because we're going to be working single crochets. Now, before I get going, I wanted to point this out. So after my last color change, I cut my yarn, but I also carried it along behind for just a few stitches, and then I can weave this end in, and that just helps, in my mind anyways, secure that a little bit better than if I had just left it here and was weaving it in. Okay, so for our border, I'm going to single crochet in the first stitch. If you want to put a stitch marker in there so you know when you're back to your beginning, go right ahead, and then single crochet in each stitch all the way across. I should have 16 stitches because I added a stitch to my square to make it a little bit bigger. All right, so my stitch marker is my turning chain, so I do need to work into that. That's where my last single crochet is going to go. And now this is our first corner. So we've got 1 single crochet, and we're going to chain 1, which helps us turn the corner, and then we're going to put our second single crochet right back into that same space. So just follow the legs of your stitch and get your hook back into that same space. Because it's a chain, it is going to be a little bit tighter. And now we need to put single crochets down the side. I'm going to say this every single time we do this. The sides are the hardest because there's no defined stitches. So you just need to figure out, approximately how many stitches per row you want. So typically for a double crochet, you're putting 1, maybe 2 per row of a double crochet, and then 1 for the single crochet. So let's see how many stitches I get. Not that that's, perfect or anything. So we've got 1 there. I'm going to put 1 kind of around this space. I do like to go into stitches as much as possible. I feel like it gives the fabric more stability. Okay, so there's 2. Get 1 in at the end of the single crochet. On this side, we are dealing with our chains, so stitches are not super easy to find for our double crochets on this side. And now we're back at our very first turning chain. So I've put 1 single crochet sort of at the top of that, and then I want to find the bottom of it for my last single crochet of that. So let's take a look at it. Yeah, it looks good. It's not pulling this way, it's not squeezing in. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I'm going to try and replicate that on this side. Wish me luck. Okay, we're in the corner. So I've got 1 single crochet. I'm going to chain 1 and then put 1 more into that first space. And then now, because I started in my back bumps in my chain, I have these nice V's, so I can easily identify where my stitches need to go. So 1 single crochet in every stitch all the way across, and I'll meet you at the next corner. This is my last stitch of the bottom row. So chain 1 to turn the corner, and then we're going to go right back into that space. I've got a tail there. I'm just going to trap it. And then I need one more in this double crochet stitch. Just going to find a spot that looks good. And then we're at a single crochet row. If you want, you can trap all these tails and crochet over them. I'm going to sort of do a little bit of trapping and not trapping. So I've already let this blue tail go. I've trapped the orange one under a couple of stitches. Now I'm going to let it go. I hope that makes sense to you guys. A lot of people will just crochet over those tails and then they don't bother weaving them in, but that makes me extremely uncomfortable, so I am not going to do that. Let's see where we're at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Perfect. 14, that's my last stitch, so I'm going to chain 1. I am back at the beginning, so I can slip stitch to that first stitch. So I'm just insert under the stitch, grab my yarn, pull it through, and pull it through that loop that's on my hook. And now I can chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in each stitch around. In the corners, we're going to do our single crochet, chain 1, single crochet again. And that's it for the border. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you when this is finished. Okay, I have come all the way around. I'm going to cut my yarn and pull my loop out. I like to do this invisible join. So I'm going to thread my yarn onto a yarn needle. And then if we look at the tops of our stitches here, this is the first stitch of our round. So I'm going to take my needle from front to back on the second stitch of the round and just pull it through, and then go straight down the center of the stitch I just completed and out the back. And then you just sort of pull it until it's about the same size and you cannot tell where it's been joined. And then we just need to sew in all our ends and we're done. So let's compare sizing. It feels like it's going to be closer to my single crochet. Yep. So I'm glad that I added that stitch, and I will pay closer attention to the charts and the stitch counts from here on out to make them more this size rather than that one. Okay, thanks for joining me. I will see you again next week, where we start to do more, we introduce some more colors, and we're changing where we place our stitches. Stay tuned. See you then. Bye-bye.